This is our first podcast. Gossamer Games is a Philadelphia indie game studio developing our first game called Soul. My name is Julian. I work with community outreach, community management, social media marketing, a lot of fun things. We all wear a lot of hats at the studio. Here we go.
Good.
Stay tuned. We'll be sharing some updates on Soul and some behind the scenes content on our social media. Feel free to follow along at Gossamer Games on twitter.com, of course. Today, though, we're here to discuss an exciting and new opportunity. I'm joined with our director, Tom, a very good friend of mine. Hello.
Oh, this is so awesome. So happy to be here.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm excited that we can get the ball rolling here. This is fun.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about our work on The Age of Alchemy, the Goldsmith's Daughter, which is a brand new project for us that is really, really exciting. We're working with the Science History Institute here in Philadelphia to create a video game based on the history of alchemy. And alchemy, I knew nothing about alchemy going into this. I thought it was like Harry Potter, like some kind of weird like witchcraft, right?
Just smoke everywhere is what I think.
Yeah, a lot of fog machines. But it's actually kind of like the beginning of like chemistry. It really is one of the first kind of formative moments for like this type of science. And so there's a lot of misconception about it. And
Definitely.
I knew nothing going into it, but we were approached by the Entrepreneurial Game Studio to create a game based on the history of alchemy. And it just fits so perfectly because alchemy is so mysterious and like intriguing, and it just lends itself so well to a video game. So we were really, really excited to be working on a project like this.
Definitely. No expert in alchemy by any means.
Yeah.
This is something fun to learn about.
Absolutely.
And, we've had the chance to poke through what I feel like is hundreds of texts and recipes and emblems and paintings and all these cool things from basically 17th century London, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to tackle it with our Vodcast here. We're going to do a 5-part series talking through the game development process. Have some fun with experimenting, doing some alchemy stuff of our own, hopefully.
Yes.
And of course, learning from professional humanities scholars and getting their insight on alchemy, in its past and in its like present. Everyone who's joining, thank you for kind of hanging out with us. We hope you'll enjoy the journey as we create our first playable alchemy experience. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, all right, let's
get serious.
Let's get serious.
Hold on. Now we both need to be there. Yes.
No, the glasses make you way more serious.
I think so.
Let's talk about Gossamer Games and gaining credibility as a studio.
Yeah.
So obviously you've been working on Soul for a while. I assume that started, in your last couple of years of school, or at least in the Entrepreneurial Game Studio. And you're killing it. We're killing it.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I mean, wow, what a journey. So Gossamer Games started, I want to say in 2014. Which is crazy to think about. Right. Wow, it's been like 4 years that we've been kind of working on some of this stuff. And we started as a student group here at Drexel University. I think there were like 4 or 5 of us at the time, kind of started talking with other members. We were part of the very first group to be accepted into the Entrepreneurial Game Studio as like an official like membership kind of thing. Cool. It was like the first formal kind of introduction to that. And we were one of the first groups. We started forming and we just started talking about like, okay, what do we see in games that we wish was a little bit different? Or what do we see that we want to try and push the boundaries a little bit? And at the time, the Entrepreneurial Game Studio was really focused on mobile. Pretty much exclusively, you could only really work on games for iOS and Android. And the big reason for that was, trying to keep the scope down, which didn't really work with us. Oops. But it was also a really interesting like design constraint for us because we looked at the mobile game marketplace and we were like, you know what? All these games, they're great. They have their audience. And one thing we're all really excited about mobile games is they're attracting a different type of player, right? You're getting a more casual audience, and there's definitely validity in having that audience. And we love that that more casual players are getting into games because of mobile.
If games can be more approachable, you know, more people can experience and love what we love about games, you know?
Exactly.
So, cool.
And so we love that, but what we didn't love about it was you open up the App Store and it's just this homogenous thing where like every app like icon looks the exact same, art style, right? Like all the genres look the same. There are all these casual social experiences. And that's great again for like that one type of audience, but you can't have an entire like part of the industry just be that, you know?
Right.
And so we were really interested in pushing the boundaries of like, well, what can we do on mobile games that would be truly different? And so we started there and we started talking about like artistically and creatively the games that we really enjoyed and that we really liked consuming. And we started kind of putting some things together. We're huge fans of games from like That Game Company, Giant Sparrow, games like Gone Home and Obzu and Proteus. Any of these like weird artsy kind of experiences, we were huge fans of those, and we knew we wanted to explore similar themes and similar design.
Yeah, and those games are less about like a linear experience. It's more about how it affects you and how you feel like while you're playing and after you're playing and that type of stuff. Awesome.
Yeah, so we were really attracted. So when you're learning games, when you're learning game design, they really put a huge emphasis on the mechanics, on what you're doing. And we were always a little bit confused at like, okay, well, yes, you have what you're doing, but we were more interested in how are you feeling, right? Because at the end of the day, it's that the emotional experience, the empathetic experience that you have interacting with this medium that we think is the most interesting part of video games.
Cool.
Because you can have such powerful emotional experiences with games. And emotional being, you know, super happy, super pumped up, super sad, you know, the whole spectrum, right?
Right.
And I think thus far we've only seen kind of a limited, narrow type of experience explored in game design. So we really wanted to explore that. And so we took, you know, those the design's goals there, and we took like the mobile platform constraint. We started thinking about like what types of games we could create for that, and that, you know, then Soul was born.
Cool.
And we started working on Soul again, like end of 2014, and went through a very, very long like brainstorming, like ideation stage. It started out as like a strategy game. It like you were going down and you were like managing resources and managing light. It was very, very different. And after about a year, we were like, you know what, this isn't really doing what we want it to be doing. And so something has to change. And so we dropped the camera down to be like third person over the shoulder and kept a lot of the same ideas of like painting with light and kind of some of these similar elements, but totally changed, I think, the design direction of it. And that set us on like a whole new path. And so we started working on going through and kind of building that world, because that was the new focus. Was it's less about like the character that you're controlling and the actions you're doing, and more about the world around you. Cool. It was like our big paradigm shift, I think. And we were lucky enough to find a home in the Biata Institute here at Drexel University after graduation. We were accepted into a student incubator space, and so we received a stipend, so we had some funding, we had office space, and we just had time, which was the most important part, to just sit down and pursue this, you know, seriously and professionally, which is always such a hard challenge for students, because you go out and you need a job, right? You need some sort of income, and with games it's really difficult because there's not, the industry is awesome here in Philadelphia, but it's very small. And so you know, it was a really, really awesome opportunity for us. So we started working on that and worked on that again like 6 months, 8 months, something like that. And then we ended up launching a Kickstarter.
Right. I feel like that's right at the top of your Kickstarter campaign is when I was introduced to you and the rest of the team at that time. Everyone was getting really excited because there was a Philly game about to hit Kickstarter, and everyone was like kind of nervous, like, are they going to fund successfully?
We were nervous too. Let me tell you, it's always really hard as you know, a brand new team coming out of college. No one knows who you are. No one knows if you can actually make video games. You don't have the pedigree. You don't have like the clout. And so it's really hard to talk with anyone in the industry and convince them that actually, we're really serious about this, like, and that we can actually do this too. And so the Kickstarter was a huge moment for us, because it was that moment of validation that, this is for real now. There are now thousands of dollars behind this.
Yeah.
There's no turning back. There's no walking away now. We've done like everything we need to, and it's time to just sit down and finish it up.
What inspired the Kickstarter push? Was that something that you were like, this is the next step that we have to do in order to continue to be able to work on our art?
Yeah. I really didn't want to do it. I really did not want to do a Kickstarter. I was horrified at the thought of doing it because I know it's how much I knew going into it, how much work it would be. It was more work than I thought it would be. But even then, I was really afraid of how much work it would be. But it ended up being the right decision to do. We knew that we had to have an additional source of income. It wasn't sustainable. We were pretty much out of funding from our startup space, and there had to be something coming in. Mm-hmm. And that was actually around the time we had, at the beginning of that year, we had started doing the design work for Age of Alchemy.
Cool.
And so we knew we had this project kind of in the back of our minds, but it needed to get that next level of funding, and we weren't going to find out about that until the end of the year.
Right.
And so it was well, what are we going to do until then?
Yeah.
Because something has to happen. And that was the Kickstarter, was
Cool.
kind of in between there.
Yeah.
And so we did the Kickstarter that was successfully funded. And that was right about a year ago, actually, now, today. And we've been using that to just finish up production.
Cool. Yeah. And so, that was a big step for you guys.
Yeah.
I feel like another big step was kind of expanding the team. And then, of course, getting a little more serious with EGS because, you guys have a great relationship as well. So I'm curious, how that relationship grew as you were designing Age of Alchemy and talking through those discussions with the Science History Institute and,
Yeah, so I remember when Frank first approached me directly about the Age of Alchemy project, and we just talked a little bit about what the project was, and it was very, very nebulous. It was something about alchemy in a game and this museum, and I was like, okay, sure. At first, of course, you're reluctant because you're a new studio and you want to be working on your own IP and you want to be doing your own thing. But the more we talked about it and the more we met with the Science History Institute and their team, their humanities team, the more I was like, wow, this is actually really, really cool. Mm-hmm. This is actually a really cool project. And so we started talking about designs, and we talked about designs for, I want to say 6 months maybe, before our big first pitch for the next round of funding. And that was a really intense series of design charrettes where we just sat down with the humanities experts and with the Entrepreneurial Game Studio and with Gossamer Games, and we sat down and figured out, okay, well, how would we actually make a game about this? Because our big focus was to make a game that's informational and educational in the sense that you're learning about the subject material, but it shouldn't be seen as an educational game per se. Because it should be an entertainment product. At the end of the day, you want to play something that's fun. And if it's not fun, then who wants to play it, right? And who's really going to engage with that content? Mm-hmm. And so from a game design perspective, that was kind of our big push is let's start with the fun things that we can do with this. And again, alchemy is so ripe for playful interactions.
Yeah.
The entire idea of experimentation and decrypting symbols and all these things are just so perfect for playful interactions. And so we went through a very long kind of brainstorming process, and that was our first kind of professional game design work. And so it was awesome working alongside the Entrepreneurial Game Studio, having their mentorship, understanding some of their production methodologies and tools and all these things. And working with the Science History Institute was an amazing experience because they were so understanding and so flexible for having such a young team kind of coming in and designing this.
And to have a team with such a backbone in in knowledge of the subject is huge because as you're designing the game, it's hard to design something that you're not as knowledgeable about. Right. So I'm sure that's awesome. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk to Cory. Cory is the project manager of EGS Studios, or Entrepreneurial Game Studio at Drexel, who's been a great help in helping with the writing and so many things. So we're here with Cory Arnold of Drexel University's Entrepreneurial Game Studio.
Hello.
Hey, a really cool program where you guys put out some fun games and you know, in hopes of teaching people things, in hopes of having a good time. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your role is in the studio and, of course, you know, different phases of production that you guys are involved with?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the program manager at the Entrepreneurial Game Studio, which means that anytime we have a project that comes in, I kind of help produce that project. I also write the grants that fund those projects, and then I also sort of manage the life cycle of those funds as we're working on those projects. So it operates like a standard research lab, at least on one side of it, where some funding organization will have some initiative in mind, and they'll say, who can help answer this research question, and we'll apply to it, and we'll say, we can do that by making a video game, and then we'll make that video game, and then we'll report on the data and sort of like write conference papers on the data and stuff like that.
It sounds very technical for something that's very creative.
Yeah, well, my side of it definitely is. And I guess we have to be more technical than some people making video games, but at the end of the day, we are still making video games, producing video games. We just usually have like an objective in mind while we're making them. That's the research side of the EGS. We also have an incubator side of the EGS where we sort of incubate student games and launch them essentially. So that side of it is a little bit more fun, I think, a little bit less serious. But honestly, doing the game design for research reasons is also pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, and you're also setting people up, you know, in the incubator stage to, when they're done with school, move on to running their own studio, launching their own game, and doing like what Soul and Gossamer Games are doing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's ideal. So the incubator, the way the incubator works is we take students from all over Drexel. They come to our program with some game idea, usually a pretty advanced game idea, and then once we think they're ready, we'll put them on like a 9-month timeline, put them in a team, and produce their game essentially and launch it. So we've launched like 6 or 7 games to date. Tom was in the incubator with Gossamer Games a long time ago with some version of Soul, I suppose. And when the cool thing is, once they graduate, if we've seen them work for many years, we see if they're any good, and if so, then we can work with them on future research projects because they're funded projects. So that's part of what we were able to do with this particular project, because we knew once Tom became his own independent studio with Gossamer, we knew what they were capable of, and Frank, who's the we call it the PI on the project, the primary investigator, decided to go right to Gossamer to make the game.
Awesome. So did Frank or you find this opportunity with National Endowment of Humanities and then, you know, think of, how can we kind of like capitalize on this and maybe think of a studio who can put up a really great design for the game? Or
I think the way it worked was that the Science History Institute had all these wonderful paintings in their archive, and they knew they wanted to do something with these paintings. I'm not sure where the original idea of making a video game came from, but at some point they approached Frank and our studio at the EGS just because of his reputation, and knew that these were the kinds of projects he takes on. At that point, he probably looked around for various studios who could handle the project and decided to pitch for the funds with Gossamer in mind specifically. So at the earliest stages, Gossamer was going to be the studio to make this game.
Yeah.
Like from the actual founding grant documents, I believe. Because the very first thing they had to do was write a design document.
Right.
So Tom...
Yeah, that was a crazy process, right? I caught the tail end of that, and it seemed very, it was extensive. It was awesome to see it happen, you know?
It's really interesting because in order to get the funds, the very first phase of it had to be a very robust design document explaining exactly what the game would do and exactly how it would incorporate humanities scholarship. So from the very early stages, it was Tom and Frank and some other people here at the EGS working with humanities scholars at the Science History Institute, pretty much like blue skying what this game could and should be.
Cool.
And they wrote this really elaborate document with a narrative flow and all this stuff. And then, you know, they pitched it, and NEH was like, yes, this is great, make a prototype. And then they started making a prototype, and now they're trying to move into production. So it's really cool that from the very beginning, the original creators of the project could work with the humanities scholars really closely with the funders to kind of bring this project all the way from like idea to execution.
Yeah, cool, man. Sounds like there were a lot of people involved. I know you had a great hand in helping us out with that first round of funding there, and then of course moving forward. So thank you.
I get to be involved a little bit, but mostly in a sort of like professional and administrative capacity. I get to be in the meetings, and Tom has me on for design conversations as well, because I'm in the office and I'm a game designer as well. So I have some minor hand in design, but really it's mostly Tom and his team making the game. I kind of serve as an interface between the creative side and then the humanities side, basically.
For sure. Well, thanks for helping us out. We're stoked to keep moving forward. And keep doing it. You know?
Yeah. Have me back when you guys are talking about design stuff, because that stuff's fun.
Cool. I feel like I have to tell myself all the time to not tell Cory that he looks great.
Yeah.
Like, his fashion
really
is awesome.
Yeah. Let me tell you.
Well, super thankful for their help for sure.
Yeah.
We're excited to kind of, keep moving forward and further develop the Alchemy project and Gossamer Games as a studio. I'm sure you're looking forward to like the next couple of years because it's going to be crazy.
Oh yeah, it's so exciting. I mean, it's so rare in game development to have stability, to have kind of like a long-term plan. And I think we're starting to see what resembles something like that start forming a little bit. And so we're really, really excited to move forward with the Age of Alchemy game. I mean, this is really only the very first part of everything we're doing here. We're just making the prototype. So we're just testing out mechanics, testing out designs. And yeah, moving forward, it's going to be like actual production should we receive the next round of funding. So we could, sit down and really create this really deep, immersive experience over these next few years. So that would be an awesome project to kind of keep working on. And then, getting Soul out the door is going to be huge, huge for us. It's going to be our first, big, full title. I think for everyone on the team, I don't think we've ever really worked on anything this big. So getting it out the door is going to be a huge milestone for us. And just putting it out there and seeing how people respond and, how critics respond, how audiences respond, and taking away lessons that we can incorporate into our next production. And that would be the next step too, is, finishing it up, putting it on the platforms we want to be on, and then, moving on to the next game, which is so exciting.
Yeah.
A lot of ideas already.
I know,
I'm so excited.
I bet.
Pages and pages. So
that's awesome. I'm curious. We talked a little bit about Age of Alchemy, right? And like obviously designing, but in Age of Alchemy, as it stands right now, like who are you? What do you do?
Yeah.
What are the stages of play? And all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, so in the Age of Alchemy, it is a first-person puzzle adventure game where you are playing as our fictional protagonist, Viola, and she is a budding young alchemist going through and just navigating her way through the world of alchemy. And you're going from level to level, and each one you are going through and gaining a new piece of knowledge, really kind of conducting a new experiment. And so we have one where you're doing a sleeping drought. We have one where you are creating medicine, another where you're doing like paint pigment. The awesome thing about alchemy as a field is it is so diverse, and it was involved in art and medicine and like chemistry and like and metallurgy and all these different aspects of science and culture as well. And so you're getting to go through and see kind of all those different pieces. And so in the game, you're going through these 3D environments that we've taken the paintings from the Science History Institute, and we've looked at them, kind of analyzed them, and then gone in and done 3D models of all the objects in the paintings. And so we actually have these 3D recreations of these paintings, which is really, really cool. So it feels like you're just kind of stepping into these paintings and into that world. And in there, you're starting to go around and collect ingredients, explore your environment in 3D space. You are talking with different characters and kind of negotiating and bartering for knowledge and ingredients. There's this whole concept of like emblems or visual depictions of alchemy as a way of communicating knowledge. And so you can like look at a sketch and it'll be this visual depiction of something very abstract and very artistic. but you start analyzing it, and there's actual like scientific meaning found within the depiction, and so you can actually start going through and like depicting or decoding some of those encrypted.
Like the sun may be referencing gold or iron, or you know, just some sort of like energy that the player has to find out for themselves.
Right. So kind of interpreting all of those depictions. And then the final part is, of course, just sitting down like at an experimentation table and just like mixing the chemicals and, you know, fanning the flames and actually making alchemical processes happen. And so it's a really cool, again, a pretty interesting mix of gameplay elements where there's a little bit of like conversation, navigation, there's like exploration, there's like the dexterity involved in like mixing the chemicals and doing the experiment. And then there's like a puzzle-esque element of like decoding, deciphering what these visual emblems are. So it's a really varied gameplay that's, I think, just as diverse as like alchemy as a subject, which was one of our big goals.
And like tying that back to the mobile market, that's huge because you know, people who aren't used to playing games can really pick that up and dive into like maybe some different stages of gameplay and really latch on to like the experimentation table or you know, the exploration like sort of like situation there. Which is fun. It's fun to see an approachable, really fun game that's like trying to get people to learn something new, you know?
Yeah, which it lines up exactly with what we want to do with Gossamer Games, which is just creating different types of experiences that can attract like a more casual or more, I guess a more casual audience, and giving them a really interesting experience that sticks with them.
Cool.
So.
Very cool. Well, we're excited to further develop Age of Alchemy and the Goldsmith's Daughter, as well as learning this world, this like secret society in alchemy that no one talks about anymore. If you're interested in staying updated with the Alchemy project, you know, feel free to follow along on Twitter. @PlayAlchemy is our handle at the moment. You know, we'll be updating some of our materials and keeping people in the know as we move forward, or jump into the world by yourself by visiting the Age of Alchemy exhibit at the Science History Institute in Philadelphia, PA. That's where we're pulling a lot of inspiration from and of course, you know, having a good time there. For news regarding Gossamer Games and Seoul, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and on Twitch @Gossamer Games, GOSSAMER Games. If you enjoy the content we're producing, let us know. Please add a comment below. Shoot us a DM on social media. We love the feedback. Upvote, subscribe. Down?
No, don't do it.
No, down. Only ups.
Only ups accepted.
But, you know, as we move forward with our podcast series or our video podcast series, let us know what you think so we can have a really great time. We're excited to keep going here.
Ball.